Welcome to chapter 9, the book of 2Chronicles. We are now in the famous story of the queen of what's called Sheba in the King James, visiting Solomon in Israel. But the Greek is Saba. Here it is right here, Sava. And Sava appears many places in the not many places, but 5 or 6 places. We'll go through them here in the Old Testament. Sava was a kingdom that, we'll go to our map here, is right down here at the bottom of Saudi Arabia. And the Arabian Peninsula, it says Arabia Felix. And I have to bend my thing down right down below here. So Sava was right in the very tip, which is called Yemen today. And these people, this area had a lot of rich soil and water rather than the rest of Arabia, which we think of. And they were able to trade all over the world. They came up here to Israel, to Ezion-Geber, and so forth in the Roman times, and the history is mentioned, as we'll find out here as we read through it. So this is probably what this Queen of Saba did when coming up here with all the wealth that she had. Now, it'll mention the wealth a little bit later here. We go into a geographer at the time of Jesus that wrote about these people. But what does it say in the Bible? Basically, it says that Saba came from the sons of Ham and then sons of Cush. Then it mentioned the king in Psalms 72:10. It mentions the kings of the Arabians and Saba will come forward with gifts, prophecy. Then in Isaiah 60, verse 6, herds of camels and camels of Midian and Ephah shall cover you. They all come from out of Saba, bringing gold and frankincense. And this is what Saba had, the frankincense, myrrh, and gold. What does that remind us? It reminds us of Magi. And they shall announce as good news the deliverance of the Lord. Then in Jeremiah 6:20 it says, why do you bring frankincense from out of Saba to me, and cinnamon from out of a land far off? So these are mentioned. Job, even, that some people believe it was written at the time of Genesis, someplace in there could have been. Ezekiel 27:2 says, your merchants, and this is a lament against Tyre, who we learned about, with Hiram bringing the timber from Lebanon. Your merchants were Saba and Ramah, and that's exactly what the Bible says here, that they went down to Ezion-Geber with Hiram's ships, and somehow, I don't know how they got down there and around there, but they did, and went to Ophir and picked up gold. And so it says, your merchants were Saba and Ramah, that's Tyre's merchants. These were your merchants with foremost of spices and precious stones, and they gave gold for your market. Then in Ezekiel 28:13 it says, Saba and Dedan, the merchants of Carthage, and all of their towns shall say to you, for plunder are you come to plunder and despoil spoils? This is in Ezekiel 38 with Gog and Magog coming against Israel in a future time. So Saba would be Yemen. And then in Job 1:15 again, and Sabaeans fell upon the captured them, and the servants they killed by swords. This is what the other ones that escaped came to tell Job at the very beginning in Job 1:15. All the woes that came to Job. And then in 6:19 of Job it says, behold the ways of the Temanites, O one seeing clearly the shortcuts of the Sabaeans. And So like I mentioned, that the Sabea is what is in Yemen today. The civilization goes back thousands of years. Later they built a dam which irrigated a large area with fruits and vegetables, and it's like over 1,000 feet long and 30, 40 feet high. It was a giant dam, considered the first dam of that proportion in history. And the trade route that went through this area was for a trade route of spice trades. And then, as I mentioned, this Strabo, the geographer at the time of Jesus, writes about these Sabaeans. And so we'll go to Strabo and what he says here. The first people next after the Syrians and Jews who occupy this country are husbandmen. And he's writing this, remember, 2,000 years ago, and he's getting some of this from other historians earlier. These people are succeeded by a barren and sandy tract producing a few palms and acanthus and tamarisk. Water is obtained by digging wells in Gedorosia, and that's a little bit further north. It is inhabited by Arabian Senate, who breed camels, and this is what the Queen of Saba brought up, camels. The extreme parts towards the south, now we're in the Saba, and opposite to Ethiopia, are watered by summer showers and are sowed twice, like the land in India. Its rivers are exhausted, and in watering plains and by running into lakes. The general fertility of the country is very great. Among other products, there is in particular an abundant supply of honey, except horses. There are numerous herds of animals, mules, asses, and swine. Birds also of every kind except geese and the gallinaceous tribe, whatever that is. 4 of the most populous nations inhabit the extremity of the above-mentioned country, namely the Minea, the part towards the Red Sea, whose largest city is Karnana. Next to these are the Sabaeans, whose chief city is Mariaba. The third nation are the Katavanese, extending to the straits and the passage across the Arabian Gulf. Their royal seat is called Tamna, and the Chatramotiti are the fourth of these nations towards the east. Their city is Sabata. Next, and we get this information from Perseus of Tufts University. That's a program that has the ancient classics. You can see this all in Greek, actually. They have another corresponding section. It would be in Greek if you wanted to read it that way. Then he continues, all these cities are governed by one monarch and are flourishing. They are adorned with beautiful temples and palaces. Their houses, in the mode of binding the timbers together, are like those in Egypt. The 4 countries comprise a greater territory than the delta of Egypt. So that's the size of it. The son does not succeed the father in the throne, but the son who is born in a family of the nobles first, after the accession of the king. As soon as anyone is invested with the government, the pregnant wives of the nobles are registered and the guardians are appointed to watch which of them is first delivered a son. And the custom is to adopt and educate the child in the princely manner as a future successor to the throne. And the third one is Katabania produces frankincense and Chatramotitis myrrh. These and other aromatics are the medium of exchange with the merchants. Merchants arrive in 70 days at Minea from Eliana, and that's Ezion-Geber up there right at the southern part of Israel. Ezion-Geber, Eliana, is a city on the other recess of the Arabian Gulf, which is called Elanitis, opposite to Gaza, as we have before described it. The Gerahi arrive in Chatramotitis in 40 days. So there's this traveling back and forth. It mentions that in the Bible. The country of the Sabae, a very populous nation, is contiguous and is the most fertile of all, producing myrrh, frankincense, and cinnamon. And this is Sabea. On the coast, Sabah. On the coast is found balsamum, and another kind of herb of a very fragrant smell, but which is soon dissipated. There are also sweet-smelling palms and calamus. There are snakes also of a dark red color, a span in length, which spring up as high as a man's waist, and whose bite is incurable. Maybe a cobra. On account of the abundance which the soil produces, the people are lazy and indolent in their modes of life. The lower class of people live on roots and sleep on the trees. The people who live near each other receive, in continued succession, the loads of perfumes and deliver them to others who convey them as far as Syria and Mesopotamia, where the carriers become drowsy by the odor of the aromatics. The drowsiness is removed by the fumes of asphaltus and of goat's beard. I'm not sure what that is. Well, asphaltus is like tar. Mariaba, the capital of the Sabaeans, is situated upon a mountain well wooded. A king resides there who determines absolutely all disputes and other matters, but he is forbidden to leave his palace, or if he does so, the rabble immediately assail him with stones according to the direction of an oracle. He himself and those about his person pass their lives in effeminate voluptuousness. The people cultivate the ground or follow the trade of dealing in aromatics, both the indigenous sort and those brought from Ethiopia, in order to procure them. They sail through the straits in vessels covered with skins. There is such an abundance of these aromatics that cinnamon, cassia, and other spices are used by them instead of sticks in firewood. In the country of the Sabaeans, I'm going to have to drop this down. This covers my bottom part of my screen. In the country of the Sabaeans is found the larimnum, a most fragrant perfume. By the trade in these aromatics, both the Sabaeans and the Gerhe have become the richest of all the tribes and possess a great quantity of wrought articles in gold and silver, as couches, tripods, as or stands, basins, drinking vessels, to which we must add the costly magnificence of their houses, for the doors, walls, and roofs are variegated with inlaid ivory, gold, silver, and precious stones. This is the account of Artemidorus. The rest of the description is partly similar to that of Eratosthenes and partly derived from other historians. So this is a description of what the Queen of Sheba came from. So we continue, and she came to test him with enigmas. So she came from a very wealthy place, probably more so than Judah. Judah would have been an outpost. It wouldn't have been anything as strong or as rich as this area that they were in. But she heard about him, and she came to test him with enigmas. Enigmasin is enigma, is a transliteration, hard things to explain into Jerusalem with an exceedingly heavy force. And camels, it later says that they attacked a lot of their neighbors at times with heavy force, and that was Strabo mentioned until the Romans came. And camels, kamili, which is a transliteration, carrying aromatic, another transliteration, and chrysion in multitude, which they had in multitude down there, and valuable stone. Now that doesn't mean large stones, probably like diamonds and rubies, things like that. And she came to Solomon and spoke to him all as much as was in her psyche, soul. And Solomon, Aningilin, whereas the alpha, the gamma will give you an idea that this is something to do with a message. And here it's an announcement, announced to her all her words. That is, he answered her with her questions. And not a word went by from Solomon which he did not report to her. And the queen of Saba beheld the wisdom, the Sophian, Sophia means wisdom, philosophy, philo, a friend of wisdom, that's what that means, the wisdom of Solomon, and the house which he built. So they had beautiful houses down there. And the foods of his trapezon, a trapeze is a flat place. It was used in circuses for acrobats, but it meant a flat table. Foods of his tables, and cathedron, a cathedral, the form of his servants, and the stasis, station of his liturgon, liturgy is a derivative, station of his ministers, and their garments, and his wine servers, and their uniform, and the whole burnt offerings which he offered in the house of the Lord. There was not a breath any longer in her. Here, now this pneuma is also used for spirit when it has to do with God, a breath. But here it's a breath in her. She was overwhelmed. And she said to the king, Vasileia, the word, the logos is true, which I heard, ikusa, acoustics, in my land concerning your words and concerning your wisdom. I did not trust in the words until of which I came and beheld with my ophthalmi, eyes, ophthalmologist. And behold, the half was not reported to me of the magnitude of your wisdom, being added over the hearing which I heard. Blessed are your men. Blessed are these your servants, standing beside you always and hearing your wisdom. May the Lord your God be for a blessing, who wanted by you to put you upon his throne for a king to your God, in that the Lord your God loved Israel, to establish it into the eon, and he put you over them as Vasileia, king, to execute equity and righteousness. And she gave to the king 120 talents of gold. A talent is 100 pounds, some places 70, some places 120. So let's round it off to make it easy. 100 pounds is a talent. So 100 talents here, 120 talents of gold. I figured it out. It comes out to $253 million worth of gold. And aromatics in a very great multitude, and valuable stones. So she was always like closer to being richer than Solomon would be. And for her to find out there's somebody that actually has more was probably unheard of. And these people are around for a long time, the Sabaeans. And there was not any according to those aromatics which the queen of Saba gave to King Solomon. And the servants of Hiram, that was a man that was the ruler of Tyre, and the servants of Solomon brought gold to Solomon from out of Ophir, Sophir, we don't know where that is, and Xela, wood of pines, and Lethone, these are all derivatives in our book, English derivatives, a valuable stone. And the king made ascents, stairs or a walkway from out of wood of pines for the house of the Lord, and for the house of the king, the house of the cedars of Lebanon, and harps, and stringed instruments for the singers. And there was not seen such as these before in the land of Judah. So he now mentions the things coming down from the north, and the things coming to Solomon from all over. In verse 12, and King Solomon gave to the queen of Saba all her wants, which she asked for. Ektos is outside, exoderm, the outer portion of the skin, ectoderm, outside of all of what she brought to the king, Solomon. So apparently she went back with what she had. And she returned unto her land all the way down there to the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula, and was the weight of the chryseu, the gold chrysanthemum plant, that gets that name from there, the gold plant, being brought to Solomon in 1 year, 666 talents of gold. 666 talents times 100 pounds each, 666,000 pounds times 16 ounces is 10,656 ounces. At today's value, with $1,320 an ounce, would be $14,065,920,000 every year. Besides what the men arranging and trading brought. And all the kings of Arabia and satraps of the land brought gold and silver to King Solomon. So now we are at the height of Israeli kingdom with Solomon here, with all this money coming in. From here on down, it goes down, unfortunately. And King Solomon made 200 shields of hammered out gold, 600 weights of pure, it doesn't say what the 600 was, I put weights in there, of pure gold being used upon the one shield. Now these shields were taken a little bit later here by, I think a pharaoh came in and spoiled the temple and these buildings and took everything, and they end up making bronze shields to replace them. So it doesn't last long. And 300 shields of hammered out gold of 300 weights of gold bore upon each shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. That was his house. And the king made a great ivory throne of tusks. This is elephantine tenon, elephant. There's where it comes from. Elephantinon is in the derivative is ivory from that. And throne, a transliteration. And he gilded it in gold, unadulterated pure gold. And there were 6 stairs, to the throne, being bonded with gold, tied together by gold. Now, I'm not exactly sure how this was, what it looked like, but you can imagine a throne being up above 6 stairs where people had to walk up with some type of a gold bound between the stairs, railing and so forth. And he placed a footstool in gold under the throne. So not only his throne, but under it, where his feet went on, a gold footstool. And the armrest angles on this side and on that side were upon the chair of the throne where he sat. The throne would have been the whole area where the chair is on the top, and then now we have it was 2 lions were standing by the armrest angle. So he had probably 2 lions the size of the armrests, so they were large. And 12 lions were standing there upon the 6 stairs, on this side and on that side. So 6 on one side, 6 on the other, 12 of them. There was not such in any kingdom. So we can see this when you were going up to see the king, Solomon. You would walk probably on a carpet till you get to the first stair, and then you'd look on the left and the right, and there would be golden lions. And then you go up the second stair, golden lions on both sides. The third, golden lions on both sides. 4 stairs, golden lions on both sides. 5th stair, golden lions on both sides. 6 stairs, golden lions on both sides. So you're probably up 6 feet high or so. And then once you get up there, there's this golden throne. And on top in a chair with then there's 2 large lions, which were the size of the armrests on both sides. And on the armrest of the chair were ivory tusks, which are probably really long and stuck out pointed either in the front or the back. Somehow it doesn't say. And all the items of King Solomon were of gold. And all the items of the house of the forest of Lebanon were overlaid in gold. Silver was not considered as anything in the days of Solomon. For ships belonging to the king went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram. Now these probably went out into the Mediterranean, somewhere along the Mediterranean where these boats would go. It doesn't mention, Strabo does not mention Tarshish or Tharsis, as it's pronounced in the Greek, Tharsis, anywhere in his geography. His geography, again, it can be found on Tufts University. It's called Perseus, Perseus. There's also a 6-volume set of Loeb Classic libraries right here. I have them, and they're really nice. You can get them from Harvard University. And this page here is in Greek, and over here is the English translation. Although this translation wasn't the same as the one that I read you, they had a different translation, but you can see these words and then go find the Greek word. And I'd love to make a, if I had around long enough, to put together a concordance of Strabo, the words that he wrote in Greek. And then it says, once in 3 years, boats came from out of Tharsis to the king, being full of gold and silver, and tusks of ivory, so they probably came someplace in Africa, and apes, which again, probably from Africa. And Solomon was magnified above all the kings of the earth, even in riches and wisdom. God gave him everything. And all the kings of the earth sought the face of Solomon to hear his Sophias, of which God put in his Carthea heart. And they brought each one his Dora, the name Dora, a woman's name. It's an old name. Women had the name Dora, means a gift. There's gifts, items made of silver, items of gold, clothes, opala, weapons, balsam and spices, horses and mules, accordingly year by year. And there were to Solomon 4,000 female horses for chariots. Now, why they're female horses, don't ask me. I'm not a husbandman or a rancher. There is probably a good reason for that. And 12,000 horsemen. So with 4,000 horses, it doesn't say how many chariots. Chariots had some of them 1, 2, 4 horses. And he stationed them in the cities of the chariots and with the king in Jerusalem. So these chariots and the troops are all Jewish people. We're all in these cities. And he was the igumenos, a leader. Igumenos, we get later into Ezekiel, this word takes a meaning. The igumenos is the calling of the prince in the last 10 chapters of the book of Ezekiel. He was leader of all the kings from the river, and that would have been the Euphrates, and unto the land of the Philistines, that's Gaza, and unto the border of Egypt, which would have probably been the Nile. And the king made silver in Jerusalem as stones, that means was common, and made the cedars as sycamine trees in the plain in multitude. That would be like here, using the most valuable wood, grenadilla wood from Africa, or ebony, and using it to make your house just as you would here in Pacific Northwest, where we have pine trees and other trees that are even not as spruce or not as nice. And so he was using the best of everything. And the delivery of the horses from out of Egypt to Solomon even was from out of all the land. So he was all the way around. He was bringing in these things. And the rest of the words of Solomon, the first and the last, proton first, eschatology, eschati last. Behold, are they not written by the words of Nathan the prophet? That was the prophet of David. And by the words, so he must have still been alive. And by the words of Ahiah, the Silonitu, Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of, in Greek, Eoid, the Orontos, Edu the seer, concerning Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Now, this 16 in the Aldine editions have Eoil, Joel, but Joel is way, way later, so I think that this was a more correct spelling of that name, whoever this person was. And now Jeroboam is now mentioned, and Jeroboam is the son of Nebat. He was a powerful man who was over the treasury of Solomon with the sons of Joseph. And he became a powerful man, and he ends up becoming king of Israel when this country is split. And Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over Israel 40 years. So 40 years they had this man, but towards the end, he left the Lord after the gods of his wives. Whether he or not he will be Abraham's bosom, who knows? And Solomon slept with his fathers, paternal, and they entombed him in the Poli, a metropolis, the city of David, his patros. And Rehoboam, his son, Evasilov's son, reigned instead of him. And this in the Greek is Rovoam. That was his son, and we will go into the history and everything about Rovoam in the 10th chapter of the book of 2Chronicles. I hope you'll join us in this next chapter and find out about Rehoboam. God bless.